Hello, I am AJ the Jazz Weeb. This is my good friend Johnny the Brass Otaku, and today we're trying something a little bit new. We are starting a series that we're going to call Chudoku, which is the Japanese word for addiction, and it is a nerd's guide to a well-rounded addiction collection. And we're going to kick off the series today with a review of Sony's PlayStation 1.
As many know, the PlayStation was born out of an attempted collaboration between Sony and Nintendo to develop a disc-playing expansion for the Super Nintendo. When Nintendo backed out of the plan, Sony continued its development and released their own console in 1994, 2 full years before Nintendo released their next console, the N64.
Now, our generation is that weird one that straddles the line between childhood game consoles, but the PlayStation is one that everybody has at least played. Either you had it or a friend did, and everybody had a blast no matter what.
You remember, your best friend busts down your door, you punch that power button, and your mom brings in some crackers while you both go apeshit, and the title screen for Spyro pops up. Yeah!
Even now as adults, players can get lost in some of the first 3D worlds that ever appeared in console gaming. It's definitely got a place among the greats, especially considering that its descendants are still being sold at very high numbers today.
Now, the PlayStation had a fantastic run. Its last game released in the US was FIFA Football 2005, released in October of 2004. Just 2 months shy of the PlayStation's 10th anniversary on the 3rd of December of that same year. Now keep in mind, consoles, even the good ones, usually only sell for 5 or 6 years, so the PlayStation's longevity is just staggering.
Sony released 2 consoles with the designation PS1. The older, more bulky console released in '94 is commonly referred to as the PSX, and the smaller, compact PS1, where they made absolutely sure to spell out the 1 for some fucking reason, released in July of the year 2000.
The older console is rugged and durable. 9 times out of 10, you can leave your PSX in storage for half a century, and it'll fire right up the second you pull it out. That, and it can handle some real abuse. I mean, it had to with the way we treated our games. Just look at those ridges!
Need proof? And yes, that is my actual PS1 that I bought like 10 years ago to play Final Fantasy VII when I was in 9th grade.
Anyway, the PSX was built pretty well, but the PS1...
The one where they made absolutely fucking sure to spell 1.
Hey, so we actually didn't expect this thing to turn on? Moments earlier, it was upside down in the snow with its CD cover broken on top. Yeah. This is awkward.
One of the most iconic pieces of the PlayStation's history is its controller, which is actually very similar to the Super Nintendo controller, but that's not surprising considering its development process. The original controller came out with the PlayStation in 1994 when it was released.
Although the fancier DualShock controller, which came out in 1998, featured the analog sticks, which were not new to the gaming industry at the time, but weren't really successful until PlayStation did it. With a lot of the 3D games released early on the PlayStation, the original PlayStation controller is really frustrating when it comes to directional controls and camera angles. But it is great for grid-based games like the older Final Fantasy titles and Chrono Trigger.
This controller matches its mothership in its durability, so when you throw it across the room with the Rage of the Ancient Gods, which is almost guaranteed, it won't break.
The analog controller runs a lot smoother, and even makes some older games easier to play, in addition to the new games that began releasing with the capability for analog control.
In comparison with its main competition, the N64, it stands up very well. Because the PlayStation used discs instead of cartridges like the N64, it could support much bigger and longer games with more content, and even some experimental things like full-motion video cutscenes. The console even works as a CD player, which, for the time, was really neat. The problem with the disc system, though, is how easily the games are damaged. When you toss an N64 game across the room to your buddy and he doesn't catch it, it's not really a problem. But if you try to toss him a PlayStation game and he fails, which is likely, the case could come open and the disc could get scratched and then it's game over for everybody.
On another note, while they originally collaborated with Nintendo to bring the system about, Sony didn't manage to get any of the rights to the beloved games that everyone knows, like Mario and Zelda, which are reserved only for Nintendo consoles. One major franchise that they did get away from the classic gaming giant was Final Fantasy.
Up until Final Fantasy VI, which was originally released as Final Fantasy III in the US for the Super Nintendo, because the numbers are screwed up and that's for another video, Final Fantasy was available exclusively on Nintendo platforms. The first game on the NES was a smash hit, which is funny because it was supposed to be the developer's final project, and now there's more than 20 of these games and Square is still pumping them out 30 years later.
Anyway, Squaresoft had already scaled back their development of previous Final Fantasy titles to work with the Super Nintendo, but the possibility was blown wide open with the PlayStation's ability to put games on more than one disc. Starting with Final Fantasy VII in 1997, Square started putting out their games on PlayStation, giving us some of the biggest and most popular titles in console history.
The PlayStation has a massive library of classics. There are a ton of these games that got their start on the PS1 and did so well that they're still being produced today, and some are even being re-released in HD, like Crash Bandicoot that just came out recently, Rayman, other things like that. And like I said, they have a huge library of great and classic games, but they have other ones that, well,
they sucked.
They suck really bad. You know the ones. $1 at the local thrift store, most of them butcherings of popular films, like Star Wars.
It sucks.
The Grinch.
A vacuum.
Planet of the Apes.
A black hole.
The Fifth Element.
A black hole with a vacuum in it.
You get the drift. However, even among the more obscure titles, there are gems to be found.
This one, Pipe Dreams 3D, is primitive and simple, but also challenging and satisfying to master.
I found a game based on the film The Italian Job, the classic one starring Michael Caine, and it's fun, witty, and pretty hilarious.
One more thing to get into is the horrible voice acting in these games.
I mean, just listen to this.
Die, monster! You don't belong in this world!
It was not by my hand that I'm once again given flesh. I was called here by humans who wish to pay me tribute.
The only thing that saves this experience is how absolutely hilarious it is. Okay, from here on out, this is how we're going to grade stuff. We have devised a system of 3 categories, each with a possible point value of 5. These categories are, first, availability, where we judge how easy it is to find a particular piece. B, entertainment value, where we judge the playability of a game, how much fun you're having, where you're reading or watching, whatever it is that we're reviewing. The final category is collection value, which is the value that we see in having this particular piece in your collection.
Points will be measured in these bad boys. Let's get started.
For a console, a good controller, and a decent game, you're looking at about $40 tops, which is a pretty good trade-off for the entertainment value.
The only thing that takes it off the score is the age. I mean, even though the system's durable, age takes its toll on electronics.
Yeah, you're pretty much rolling the dice on a dime store system, or even if you buy it from an old electronics store. As for entertainment value, we're going to go ahead and give the PlayStation a score of 3 out of 5. Sony brought us Crash Bandicoot, Ape Escape, Final Fantasy VII, Metal Gear Solid, and a whole ton of great games.
However, as previously mentioned, there's a mountain of garbage for this system, which unfortunately knocks 2 dangerous off.
As for the essentiality of this modest little gray box to your collection, we gave it a score of 3 out of 5. There are games on this system that pioneered entire genres, like Metal Gear Solid and Resident Evil, and there's a whole bunch more that served immensely in bringing video games to the third dimension.
The main thing that knocks down the essentiality of this console is the fact that you can play any PS1 game on a PS2 or PS3, and many games are also available for digital download from the PlayStation Store. On a side note, if you don't want to gamble on that console that you found at Goodwill, this is a good alternative.
But if you do that, then your mom's a hoe, and you will never get the true classic experience. Fight me. Okay everybody, that is the end of our review of the PS1. Thank you so much for watching, and don't die.
This is our first video, obviously, and we already have things coming down the line. We are already planning a top 10 PS1 video and a review of a popular anime movie, so stay tuned and watch for that.
Let us know what else you would like us to review in the comments, because we will literally do a review on anything.